What's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is another chance encounter.
Hey, what's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg. I'm a commercial real estate guy. I'm from the internet. We're seeing more properties like this being built in front of a house that's going to be torn down soon. I understand that there are power lines that are getting kind of close. What's up again? This is Dan Fredenberg, and that there is a commercial real estate building.
I'm joined today with Scott Kidd. How you doing today, Scott?
Hey, how we doing, Dan?
I'm fantastic, because after all, my very favorite audience member is joining us today. And why is my favorite audience member joining us today? Well, it's because this is a chance encounter where I interview commercial real estate syndicators, buyers, sellers, investors, all that kind of stuff. And why would I do such a thing? Well, it's because there's this law that says if you want access to the private deals that commercial syndicators are up to, you need to have a documented prior substantive relationship. And so it's important to make sure that you've got overlap, check everybody out and find out what's going on. But more importantly, I want to make sure that you understand how to effectively communicate on the subject of commercial real estate, and you understand how a deal works, and most importantly, how my guest fits into those deals. But before we get into details about deals, Scott, do you want to say a few things about yourself, maybe in the boat in your background?
Sure. Scott Kidd. Been a yacht captain for about 25 years. Commercial real estate, multifamily investor. Um, Passive and active. I also run a meetup group for yachty real estate investors, which helps people on yachts and in maritime yacht community invest in multifamily and commercial assets.
That's amazing. So the first segment in the Chance Encounters are the five distinct motivations. Before I do that, though, I like to say, but wait, check your eight. Scott, I don't know if you can see through the camera and into their device. If you imagine a clock and like at 8 o'clock, it's like down there. There might be this hideous red button that says subscribe on it in the audience's device, and that really should they should hit that because it's free. Nah, it's just a joke I do on everyone. But the distinct motivations that I found separate commercial real estate investors are as follows. The first one is preservation of purchasing power. Some people are going through the hassle of making another acquisition, even though they've already got a portfolio of assets, and the way that they make their ends meet is off of ownership, the proceeds of ownership of that portfolio. But when inflation rears its ugly head, you don't want to be getting rid of assets unless they're really a dog and they're not performing. So they'll make a new acquisition when inflation is eating away at their purchasing power. Or if there's an asset crash, then they might want to pick up properties at a discount. But this is not my motivation for being in commercial real estate. My motivation is trading time directly for wealth. Now, I got a background in tech that makes me a high earner. Specifically, it's the CRM industry. I own a CRM agency since 2011, and it's a special type of CRM, which is the kind that it's not just emailing everybody on your list. It's also accepting credit card transactions. So there's an extra level of complexity there. But regardless, the problem of being a high salary, high wage earner is you're paying more in tax than anybody else. So it hit me as, how can I pivot into another industry or into something where I'm being rewarded in the form of deployed capital, aka equity? So that's what I'm up to, but that's not everybody. Most people who turn around and say, I want to be in commercial real estate, they are looking to take over their schedule. They want to take control of their schedule, and that might mean fast tracking retirement. It might mean that they just want to work fewer months per year or fewer weeks per month. But that's not my big concern. Some people, though, they're not looking to scale back at all. They're just plain ambitious. They want to buy their entire hometown. They want to make sure that they have the biggest yacht in the pier, whatever it is. But when you're going for that generational wealth, making sure that your great grandchildren never have to hold a day job, you're going to have to hustle into your 90s. And that makes people who choose this answer a very valuable piece of the team. And the last group, they're also going to be hustling into their 90s, but their motivation is different. They've picked a sector of society, or maybe it's the environment, or maybe it's animals, whatever it is. They realize that you need a very substantial financial backing if you're going to make a big impact. And so that's why they're making acquisitions. So, Scott, of those five different motivations, what jumped out at you? What combination of those would you say describes you best?
I would say the first two, I'd say capital preservation and just expanding my portfolio, and the end, helping people who need it. Because the industry I work in on the yachts, it can be a very fickle industry, and it can start and end very rapidly. Jobs can go very quickly. If there's a economic correction, the toys are the first to go. So we can be here today, gone tomorrow, and you'll need to have some kind of income coming in. As I myself have been through it, got called a few times, were gone the same day, and you need to have some passive income coming in to where you have that cushion. Maybe you don't need to. If you are a career person like me, you need to have some money coming in to where, okay, well, I don't need to take the very next thing. I can, without depleting my savings, I have money coming in. I have assets. I have other things I'm working on, real estate. I'm very passionate about that, and boats. So for me, I'm just trying to connect the two to where that it helps other people see, especially the younger generation, that, hey, I have these, options available. We don't get retirement. We don't have those things. A lot of times you don't even get health insurance and stuff, but the better boats do, and it's starting to move towards that way. So that way I can help them, and then also we can all invest together and do bigger and better things.
I love that. Being able to afford to say no is an enormous thing. And that's part of the risk of all of this. But specifically, when we go on to this next segment here where we're doing a tolerance for risk assessment, it's because some people come into commercial real estate and they're like, oh, well, there's money in it. So here I
Mm-hmm.
am. Let's do this. It's like, well, there's risks as well. It's a competitive
Mm-hmm.
industry, and you have to have that straight. So to find out whether my guest understands the risk involved, I like to use this fill in the blank question. So, Scott, there are many popular investment asset classes, but I think blank is too risky. What's too risky
My
for you?
popular.
Mhm. Sorry?
Um,
Mm.
I'm not. I don't know. At this point, right now, I would say fix and flip for me is too risky right now. But that's just me. Some people are still doing it. Friends of mine are still doing it. It's just something that I don't do right now.
Are you talking about single family houses, or are you talking about apartment complexes and you want to avoid value?
Uh, e either one.
Mhm.
I'm not avoiding value add, but I probably light value add right now, or a something that's going to take about 2 years. That we have enough capital raised where we can get through this. Hopefully, in 2 years, the rates will be more stable. They won't be moving all over the place.
Mhm,
As
mhm.
long as they're stable, we'll be a lot better off.
I love it. I love it. And so just to make sure that you like, because I don't know if what your commercial real estate experience is, but I want to make sure that you understand how my guest helps these deals, these acquisitions happen. And to do that, I use the Dan Does Deals Core Competency Cube. You can get your own copy at dandoesdeals.com, and it's free. And like a dummy, I don't even ask for your email address. I really should, because that's just basic marketing. You don't give anything for free unless you get some contact information. But I wanted to make sure there are no barriers to entry, so you can just print these out. You can practice. That way you can effectively communicate on this subject. You can show your friends, show your family, all that kind of stuff. But in every episode of Chance Encounters, I go through all 6 sides. It only takes about 2 minutes. And the biggest thing is I show you what the different meanings of the word investor is. So first one, repositioner. The repositioner is an acquisitions person. So they're looking at a bunch of different properties, doing a bunch of different paperwork. And what are they doing with that paperwork? Well, the first thing, there's a fancy word for it. They underwrite the deal. And that means they check to see, is this property even making the amount of money that the broker or seller is claiming that it is? And on top of that, they're figuring out how can they change how the business is run so that there's more upside. And the first spot that's super duper simple is every repositioner has to have a network of financiers, banks, lenders, stuff like that. And financiers are people who deal only in paper and money. Okay. So you have some investor relationships for sure as a repositioner, but the point is if you get more advantageous lending, that goes straight to the bottom line of the business as profit. So that's one thing that they're looking for. But really, the repositioner, if they don't have that big of a network, that's not going to be on the table. In the first place, they're going to look is the operations team. So they're going to make sure that those Benjamins stop going down the toilets there. But of course, there's more to this than these operations than just unclogging toilets or collecting rent and all that kind of stuff. As an asset manager, you have to oversee all that kind of stuff. But me personally, one of my fortes is marketing. And so when vacancy rates are starting to have a bit of a problem, that's where I come in and I also help automate. But if you can cut some expenses there in operations and how it's run, or build a few more things that are revenue generating, then you've got some upside. But often for the repositioner, that's not going to be enough. So they're going to be looking at a contractor team to do a value add or do those renovations so that the next tenant to live in the units will be happy to pay more than the previous ones. But having contractors fix things up, that can get super duper expensive. So it's a little bit dangerous to the business, especially if you're like me. See, I'm from the internet. Okay. So that means I can't be there in an hour or something. So I need locals. You need boots on the ground who can be there in an hour or two, because I'd still be stuck at the airport. You need somebody who's accountability, who can check in, make sure that the contractors aren't cutting corners, and same with the operators and whatnot. But when you've got those people all figured out and the repositioner has the deal in hand, they turn around to the financier and says, hey, I'm looking to take over this building that's worth tens of millions of dollars. Do you happen to have, say, tens of millions of dollars that you want to lend us? And the financier is going to have one question on their mind, like the banks and lenders like that, which is, who is your sponsor? Who is your KP? And what's that all about? See, even if you've got a few wealthy friends and you want to team up together and take over an apartment complex, if you want to be eligible for a commercial loan, you need somebody in the fold who already owns a similar asset. And some coaches kind of gloss over that, and it's not good. Anyway, the things that you need from a sponsor KP, they either would need to own a similar asset to the one that you're trying to take over, or maybe they supply more balance sheet because the ownership team needs a certain amount of balance, at least the amount of the loan. And on top of that, they need some liquidity. But if you have all those pieces, you got yourself a commercial real estate deal. So Scott, everybody is a repositioner to some degree. Everybody has some financier roles. But as far as you go, what are your core competencies that you're most likely to bring to your next deal?
Well, for the most part, seeing that I've worked 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, I'm more help on the back end, in some of the operations,
Yes.
help solve problems, and then once the deal is gone through, you help the deal go through, and then help on the back end with problem solving.
Mhm.
Increasing revenue, decreasing expenses. Because I do that on the boat. I've done that, for decades on the boat. It's the same thing, whether it's a $20 million boat or a $20 million property. It's the same thing. Cut expenses without ruining the operation. You don't want to cut everything down to zero, or else you're going to end up having a lot of deferred maintenance. You can easily do that, but the deferred maintenance will kill you in the long run. It may look good on paper for a few months or maybe even a couple of years, but it's going to bite you really hard if you don't make sure that that's on the top. So mostly asset management and
Mhm.
problem solving, troubleshooting.
All right. I love it.
Used to doing things on the fly when you're on the boat. There's nobody that's going to come help you. So you gotta be pretty self-sufficient.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's awesome. So the next question has to do with the buy box or ideal property. And when commercial real estate investors are talking about your ideal property, they talk about three main things. First one's geography. Where is it? So which state, which county, possibly even which neighborhood. That's the first one. Second one's going to be the size. Okay. So we're talking about multifamily, and multifamily you usually go by unit count. And the reason for that is because you're going to have a different type of team taking over 15 unit apartment complexes compared to 150 unit apartment complexes. So that size definitely matters. But if you're talking about other types of commercial real estate like warehousing, it might go up a square footage, but we definitely need to know the size. But the third one has to do with the class. And unfortunately, some people use the same word for two different things, but let's go through those. The first meaning of class, it has to do with the condition of the building. And that means, like, is it super duper old, or is it more or less up to date? Is it beat up, or is it in reasonably good shape? Is it like really, really no frills, or is it just filled with amenities and luxuries and things like that? That's the first meaning of class. The second meaning of class, it has to do with the area where the property is located. So what are the school districts like? What is the traffic like? What is the crime rate like where the property is located? And both of those two meanings of class, they're rated with the same system as in grade school, with A plus at the top, and then A, and then A minus, and B plus, and so on. So Scott, as far as you go, what's the ideal property? What's easier to say yes to and more difficult to say no to?
More to say yes to would be a C property in a B area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right now we're looking in Florida up and down the I-95 corridor, and looking in Houston, Texas. Just started looking there again. Um, the cap rates are not really, they're all kind of relative based on the neighborhood and stuff like that. Light value add, but I'm not against uh, a long value add as long as it, like I said, if it's going to be take about 2 years or something like that. That way it'll be, and we have enough reserves to cover all that to get through the turnover and the repositioning and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. So at ground up, there's just like it's not really viable because you want to have like 2 years before it's like cash flow.
yeah, I'd like to have something where it's a light value add, where it's 6 months and you're maybe redoing the exterior, or maybe doing 10 of the maybe 10 to 20% of the units, something like that. Where there's some meat left on the bone, to where we can do some value add, and within a few years we have it running well. And my time frame is always 5 years in my head, where we're maybe 2 or 3 years with refi, maybe sell it in 5 to 10 years, depending on if it's going really well and it hasn't capped out for the area, then just keep it, let it keep going.
I love it. I love it. All right. And the next question has to do with people who you are disproportionately well suited to help. One thing that's fantastic about commercial real estate is because we're all putting teams together all the time, we're really eager to give referrals and all that sort of thing. But because we have our own unique skill sets, we're disproportionately well suited to help some people more than others. Me, with my tech and marketing skills, I've generally been looking for sponsor KPs because they actually have the foundation where a person like me can make an enormous difference. But the locals are the people who I often like to have on these shows, even though they're going to have some sort of repositioner roles. Now, if you have any 506B deals, don't go enticing investors. So if you have like donuts or stuff like that, don't wave it in front of the camera or whatever. But I think you can say beginners. You already mentioned people who are in the yachting industry are a great fit. Anybody who's a beginner, usually
Yeah.
people are eager to talk to. But who are you eager to have reach out to you?
Any yacht professional businesses, subcontractors, brokers, um, anyone in the maritime, because we all have kind of like that same saltwater in our veins kind of thing. We all love the water and stuff, and a lot of people have money sitting on the side they don't know what to do with at that time, and I'd like them to see the options and just the power of commercial real estate. That long term you can build great amount of wealth, for not for only for you, but you can pass it down a lot easier than you can other things.
Hmm.
And it's just set up that way.
Hmm.
If wealth generation, just do what the wealthy do.
Right, right. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And the last question is, how do people reach out? Me, I'm easy to get a hold of. I got this distinct last name, so I'm easy to find. LinkedIn is by far the best social media platform to try and connect with me. But if you scan this QR code with your phone, that'll take you to the FAQs page of 506BME, which is where I offer a service to handle all your IT and streamline your investor database building so that you have the documentation if the SEC audits you and asks about your investor relationships. But Scott, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what are the best ways?
The best way you can get me is on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Scott Kidd, or on all the rest of the social media. It's Yachty Real Estate Investors. And I have my website is yachtyrei.com. You can get me on there. Um, Other than that, you can find me on social media or probably at the marina.
Excellent. Beautiful. So then the last thing, it's actually not for you, Scott, it's for you in the audience, which is if you've been watching this episode and you've been experiencing searing pains in your eyeballs, like migraine-like symptoms, it's probably because under my left hand, if you look way down, there's this hideous red button that says subscribe on it. And if you hit it, it's free, it costs you nothing. It turns into the gray button, which does not give you searing at all. And the reason why I like it when people do that is because it means that YouTube will start to pay for these videos instead of me, which is better. And just so full disclosure, so you know what's going on, it really just means that my videos might show up on your list of suggestions. You can go ahead and ignore those suggestions just because I appreciate the fact that you spent this time with me, just like Scott. I appreciate you joining me today. This has been really cool.
Well, same here. Thanks for having me. It's
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks.
great.
Make sure you 506B me. Any syndicators, make sure you 506B me.
Hi.
Oh, hey, yeah, here's my code. You got your QR code scanner? Okay, yeah, oh yeah, just hold it right in the square there. Okay, cool. And now you hit open in browser.
Okay.
Okay, are you already logged into 506BME?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so there's my video. So now I'm already on your watch list. So when you get back to your hotel, you can find out what my core competencies are and my level of sophistication. Sound good?
Yeah.
I love your hat. Real estate's a scam. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
506BME, everybody.